In the year 2145, humanity's reach had expanded far beyond the confines of Earth. Space exploration was no longer a dream, but a reality. The human race had colonized moons, planets, and even distant stars. Yet despite their advances, they had never encountered anything like the Galactic Empire, a vast, powerful force that had ruled over countless galaxies for millennia. It was a calm day when the first signal came. The Earth's communication stations received a message from deep space. It was encrypted, highly advanced, and unmistakably alien. It didn't take long for scientists and military personnel to decipher the message. The message was simple, yet powerful. Surrender your planet. The Galactic Empire demands your obedience. The world's leaders gathered to discuss this sudden development. They were expecting something, anything, to follow an invasion, perhaps a fleet of warships to block the skies. But the humans were caught by surprise, not by the message itself, but by the tone. The Galactic Empire's words were confident, even arrogant. They spoke as if humanity had no choice but to obey. But the humans, who had faced far more difficult challenges before, were not afraid. In fact, most of them found the whole situation a bit amusing. After all, they had come a long way since their first steps into space. The idea that some far-off empire could just come and demand their planet without even seeing the people they were dealing with felt almost laughable. An emergency meeting was called in the United Nations, where world leaders, generals, and scientists gathered. The world was on edge, but there was also a sense of disbelief. Were they really being threatened by some empire in space? General Sarah Williams, the head of Earth's military forces, stood at the front of the room. Her voice was calm and collected, but there was a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Are we supposed to be afraid of this empire?" she asked, her words cutting through the tension in the room. "They've never seen us fight. They have no idea what we're capable of." One of the diplomats spoke up. "But General, they are a galactic empire. We're just one small planet. We could be wiped out in a moment." General Williams smiled, her confidence unwavering. "I'm not worried about their fleet. I'm worried about what happens when they realize they've made a mistake." She paused. "We'll show them what humans are made of. We've never been afraid to stand up to a bully." The room fell silent, and then the leaders began to murmur in agreement. It wasn't that they were underestimating the empire. It was just that humanity had faced overwhelming odds before and always found a way to fight back. The idea of surrendering, without even trying, was out of the question. Later that evening, the message from the Galactic Empire was broadcast to the public. It was delivered by a figure with a commanding presence. His face, although covered by a helmet, seemed to radiate authority. His words were clear. "We are the Galactic Empire. We rule over all life in this galaxy. Your planet is of no exception. Your time to bow to our power is now." The entire world watched in silence as the broadcast ended. And then, as if on cue, the humans did something unexpected. It wasn't that they weren't taking the empire seriously. It was more like they didn't know what else to do. The idea of being told what to do by an empire from another galaxy felt absurd. In New York, a crowd gathered in front of the giant screens in Times Square. As the alien emissary's words echoed through the air, people began to chuckle. The message felt more like a bad science fiction movie than a genuine threat. "I mean, come on," one man yelled, shaking his head. "Who do they think they are? The Empire is coming to Earth. Well, let them come." In Paris, a group of scientists gathered in a laboratory, laughing as they analyzed the broadcast. "A galactic empire? Please," one of them said, rolling his eyes. "They've never even met humanity. We'll show them how wrong they are." The news spread quickly. From Tokyo to Rio de Janeiro, humanity's response was the same: laughter. It was as though the world had collectively decided that this empire, no matter how big or powerful, was simply too ridiculous to be taken seriously. The leaders of the Galactic Empire were not pleased. The transmission from Earth had been sent back to their homeworld, where it was watched by the Emperor and his council. The humans' laughter echoed in their ears like an insult. "This is impossible," one of the Emperor's advisors said, his voice filled with disbelief. How can they mock us like this? They don't understand the power we wield. The Emperor's face remained expressionless as he considered the situation. Prepare the fleet. They will learn to respect us. Back on Earth, the laughter continued. For the first time in history, the human race wasn't intimidated by an alien threat. Instead, they were filled with a quiet confidence, knowing that they could face whatever came their way. And so, humanity waited, laughing in the face of a threat from beyond the stars. What the Galactic Empire didn't realize was that they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. They'd underestimated humanity's spirit. The laughter from Earth had not been lost on the Galactic Empire. The Emperor, a being of immense power and pride, could hardly believe the news. For centuries, his empire had ruled without challenge, and now, a primitive species from a small planet had mocked them. It was unacceptable. On the Emperor's command, the Imperial fleet began to mobilize. Hundreds of ships, each one capable of destroying entire cities with a single blast, moved into formation. The Empire's military strength was unparalleled, and their weapons were more powerful than anything humanity had ever seen. They believed that with this show of force, Earth would quickly submit to their will. Back on Earth, life continued as usual. The people went about their daily routines, but the growing threat from the Empire was never far from their minds. The news of the fleet's arrival spread like wildfire. But humanity's response was still one of defiance, not fear. World leaders, including General Sarah Williams, gathered once again to discuss their response. The room was tense, but there was a quiet sense of unity among the leaders. No one wanted to back down. No one was willing to surrender. We've all seen the reports, General Williams began, her voice steady. The Empire is sending a fleet. They're coming here too. Show us their power. But we are not afraid. There were murmurs of agreement around the table. The leader of the European Union, a young but experienced diplomat named Ana Garcia, stood and addressed the group. They might have the numbers, the ships, and the weapons. But we have something they don't. We have the will to fight. And we have something else, our creativity. Her words struck a chord with everyone in the room. It wasn't just military power that would save humanity. It was their ability to think outside the box, to innovate, to use their intelligence in ways that the Empire could never have predicted. In the following days, Earth's nations came together like never before. They put aside their differences and began to work in unison, combining the best of their technology and resources. The military, scientists, and engineers worked side by side, designing new weapons, crafting defensive systems, and preparing for what was to come. The most brilliant minds in the world were focused on one goal: how to stop the Empire's invasion. Earth's new defense systems were a mix of existing technologies and some newly invented strategies. There was a new energy shield capable of withstanding attacks, a fleet of agile ships that could outmaneuver the massive Imperial warships, and, most importantly, a new weapon that could exploit a weakness in the Empire's power. General Williams had made it clear that Earth would fight with everything it had. We don't have the luxury of sitting back and waiting to be conquered, she said. We will show them that humanity is not just a species to be ignored. We're going to make them regret underestimating us. The day before the fleet's arrival, every country on Earth stood united, ready to defend their planet. People who had once been divided by borders now stood together as one. News outlets around the world reported the situation with a sense of urgency, but also with a spark of hope. Humanity's response was no longer one of fear, but of determination. At the same time, the Empire's fleet moved ever closer. Their ships, dark and imposing, filled the skies above Earth. They were a terrifying sight to anyone who saw them, their massive engines burning through the stars with unrelenting power. The commander of the fleet, Lord Zarek, stood at the helm of his flagship, staring down at Earth below. "Prepare to make them kneel," he commanded. "Our power is unmatched. They have no chance." The Imperial fleet was well prepared for war. Lord Zarek's strategy was simple: overwhelm Earth's defenses with sheer force. His ships would land, obliterate the planet's military bases, and force the humans to surrender. The humans, in his mind, were a minor threat, a species that could never hope to defeat the Empire. As the fleet entered Earth's orbit, the people on the ground began to feel the weight of the situation. The sky grew dark with the shadows of the Empire's ships, casting a long, oppressive silence over the world. But even then, Earth did not give in. In every city, in every corner of the planet, people were preparing. The entire world was watching, waiting, ready. The tension was palpable as the Imperial ships positioned themselves for their final assault. But it was not a time for fear. It was a time for action. The humans had made their decision. They would not kneel. They would fight. The Empire, confident in its victory, had no idea what it was about to face. They had expected a planet of weaklings, easily intimidated and quick to surrender. What they didn't know was that they were facing a species that had survived countless hardships, one that had built its civilization on the foundation of resilience and ingenuity. The first shots from the Empire's fleet rang out,
piercing
the quiet of space. The battle for Earth had begun, but it was far from over. The skies above Earth darkened as the massive fleet of the Galactic Empire descended into orbit. Hundreds of enormous warships, each equipped with weapons that could destroy entire cities in a single blast, hovered menacingly over the planet. The Empire had made it clear: surrender or face destruction. But the people of Earth were ready. General Sarah Williams stood at the command center, her eyes focused on the holographic map before her. The world's united defense forces had worked tirelessly over the past few days, preparing for this very moment. Earth's new weapons were ready, and the first wave of fighters, sleek and fast, were lined up for takeoff. "Stay sharp, everyone," she said, her voice steady but filled with determination. "This is our planet. We fight for our homes, for our families, for our future." Around her, soldiers, engineers, and pilots moved quickly, each one with their own task. Humanity's response to the Empire was no longer a joke. It was a full-on effort to show the invaders that they had underestimated Earth's spirit. The first strike came just after dawn. A beam of energy shot from one of the Imperial ships, aiming directly at the ground below. The massive ray tore through the atmosphere, creating a shockwave that rattled buildings and shook the Earth's surface. It was a powerful attack, meant to set an example and break the will of humanity. But the humans were prepared. Earth's new energy shields flickered to life, absorbing the blast. The sky glowed as the shield absorbed the Empire's power. For a moment, it seemed like the entire world was holding its breath. Then, to the Empire's surprise, the shields held. The attack had not broken through. The Imperial fleet was momentarily stunned. They had expected the shields to fail, but instead, humanity's technology had withstood the power of their weapon. Lord Zarek, the commander of the Imperial fleet, scowled in disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered under his breath. "How did they manage to create this?" Meanwhile, on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. People cheered and shouted in triumph. It wasn't just that they had survived. It was that they had stood firm. The humans had not crumbled under the first attack. They had resisted, and in doing so, they had sent a message to the Empire. But the battle was far from over. The Empire, infuriated by the unexpected resistance, launched a second barrage of weapons, targeting major cities around the globe. The warships fired with deadly precision, sending blasts toward Earth's major population centers. Strike was a message. The Empire would not be so easily defeated, but humanity wasn't backing down. General Williams and her team gave the signal for the next phase of the defense. The newly designed fighter jets, which had been modified with faster speeds and better maneuverability, rose into the air, cutting through the smoke-filled sky. Their mission was clear: defend Earth's cities and engage the enemy fleet. The fighter jets swarmed into the air, their engines roaring with power. Earth's pilots, some of the best in the world, took to the skies with a sense of unity and purpose. They were no longer fighting for their countries. They were fighting for their planet. As the first wave of Imperial fighters moved toward Earth, the human pilots locked onto their targets. In the distance, they could see the massive Imperial ships, their shadows falling over the ground like a storm cloud. The Empire's fleet was impressive, but the humans had something the Empire didn't: their ability to work together as a team. The human jets zipped through the sky with incredible speed, dodging blasts and returning fire with precision. First few Imperial fighters were destroyed in moments, their massive ships falling from the sky in bright explosions of light. The battle raged on for hours. The humans, despite being outnumbered and outgunned, fought back with everything they had. Each fighter jet became a symbol of humanity's refusal to back down. Each shot fired a message to the Empire: we will not be your slaves. Back on Earth, in the cities that had once been targeted for destruction, people were preparing for the worst. But with every victory by the human pilots, the mood shifted. People began to believe that maybe, just maybe, they could win. There was a sense of hope that had been absent before. They were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting to defend their right to exist. The Imperial fleet, still overwhelming in size, began to realize that this battle would not be as easy as they had thought. Lord Zarek watched as his ships continued to fall one by one, the human resistance growing stronger with each passing hour. He clenched his fists in frustration. "How are they doing this?" he muttered, his voice filled with disbelief. "They should be crushed by now." But as the day wore on, it became clear to the Empire that this was no ordinary fight. Humanity was different. They were not just a weak species to be easily conquered. They had a fire within them that the Empire had never expected, and that fire was growing stronger with every passing minute. The battle had stretched on for hours, and the Empire was growing more frustrated with each passing moment. Their fleet, once a symbol of overwhelming power, was slowly being whittled down by the unexpected resilience of humanity. General Sarah Williams, standing in the Earth Command Center, watched the battle unfold on the massive holographic screen. The battle was fierce, but she could see that their forces were gaining ground. "We're holding them off," she said, her voice steady. Despite the chaos around her, "They're not used to this kind of fight. They thought we'd surrender after the first strike, but we've shown them something else." Her words were true. The Imperial fleet had expected to easily crush Earth's defenses, but humanity had refused to be intimidated. Each strike from the Empire had been met with a calculated defense, and each attack from humanity had been delivered with fierce precision. But the Empire was not backing down. The sheer size of their fleet, coupled with their advanced technology, meant that Earth's forces were still struggling to keep up. The humans had their new weapons, their fighter jets, and their energy shields, but they were still fighting against a force that could reduce entire cities to rubble in seconds. The Empire had the advantage of numbers, and their weapons were unlike anything Earth had ever seen. Lord Zarek, commanding the Imperial fleet, looked down at the holographic map of Earth. His ships had suffered heavy losses, but the humans were not yet capable of defeating his forces. "Continue the assault," he ordered coldly. "They may be resilient, but they will fall. You will break their will." The Imperial fleet responded to his command, launching a new wave of attacks. More weapons fired from the ships and more explosions lit up the sky above Earth. The humans fought back with all they had, but the battle was beginning to take its toll. The energy shields that had protected Earth's cities began to flicker under the strain of constant attacks, and more fighter jets were falling from the sky. "We can't hold them off much longer," General Williams said, her expression tense. "We need something more, something that will turn the tide of this battle." The room fell silent as the world leaders and military commanders considered her words. They had thrown everything they had at the Empire, but it wasn't enough. The Empire was relentless, and their weapons were simply too powerful. But humanity had one advantage: they weren't afraid to take risks. Then one of the scientists in the room spoke up. "There's one more weapon we haven't tried yet," he said. "It's a long shot, but it might just be enough to stop them." General Williams turned to the scientist. "What is it?" The scientist paused before answering. "It's a new kind of energy weapon. We've been working on it for months, but we weren't sure it was ready. It's designed to penetrate the Empire's shields and strike directly at the heart of their ships. If we can hit them with this weapon, it could disable their fleet." The idea was bold, but it was the only option left. General Williams nodded. Prepare the weapon. We're launching everything we've got. Across the globe, the human forces scrambled to prepare. The new energy weapon, a prototype that had never been tested in battle, was loaded onto a satellite. Its purpose was clear: to strike at the Empire's weak point, cripple their fleet from within. The humans knew that this was their last chance. If the weapon failed, the Empire would crush them. But if it succeeded, it could be the turning point they so desperately needed. As the weapon was launched into space, all eyes were on the skies. The satellite carrying the energy weapon ascended rapidly, its path calculated to strike directly at the heart of the Imperial fleet. The tension was unbearable, but humanity had come this far. They had nothing to lose. Back on the ground, the battle raged on. Earth's defenses were faltering, but the fighters kept coming, and the resistance remained strong. The Empire had underestimated humanity's will to survive. No matter how powerful their weapons were, they could not break the spirit of the humans. The energy weapon finally reached its target. The central command ship of the Empire's fleet. With a deafening hum, the weapon fired, sending a powerful beam of energy directly at the ship's weak spot. For a moment, there was nothing but silence. Then, the skies above Earth lit up with a blinding explosion. The beam of energy struck the Imperial flagship with such force that it tore through the ship's defenses, disabling the vessel in an instant. The flagship, the heart of the Imperial fleet, was crippled. The shockwave rippled through the Empire's fleet, causing chaos among their forces. The Imperial ships, once perfectly coordinated, now struggled to regain control. Panic spread through their ranks as they realized what had just happened. They had lost their command ship, and with it, the central coordination of their attack. Lord Zarak, watching from his remaining ship, clenched his fists in anger. Impossible, he spat. How could they have done this? But the damage was done. The Empire's once unified fleet was now in disarray. The humans had struck a blow they had never expected, and the Empire's confidence began to waver. The tables had turned. General Williams watched as the Empire's ships began to retreat. They had done it. They had pushed back the most powerful force in the galaxy. It wasn't just the weapons they had used, but the courage and determination. Of every human that had fought, it had proven once and for all that humanity could not be crushed by fear or force. The Empire might have underestimated them, but now they would learn the true strength of humanity. The shockwave of the explosion that had disabled the Imperial flagship echoed through the ranks of the Empire's fleet. The massive ship, once a symbol of their power, was now crippled, its energy systems flickering as the crew scrambled to regain control. The Empire's carefully coordinated attack was falling apart before their eyes. Lord Zarak stood in his command center, his face twisted with disbelief. How could this happen? He growled, staring at the holographic display of his fleet's position. The humans had done something they had never expected. Their last-ditch weapon had broken through the Imperial defenses, and now the fleet was in chaos. The once impressive show of force had quickly turned into a disorganized retreat. The Empire's warships, which had been poised for victory, were now scattered, their once imposing formations broken. Some ships began to fall back, while others continued to launch desperate attacks, unsure of their orders or targets. The humans had turned the tables. General Sarah Williams watched the unfolding events from Earth's command center, her heart racing with a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. The battle wasn't over yet, but the tide had changed, and the weapon had worked. Empire's flagship was disabled, and its fleet was no longer working as a unified force. Keep the pressure on them, General Williams ordered, her voice calm but filled with determination. We can't let up now. If we do, they'll regroup and strike back. The human forces on Earth and in space responded swiftly. The fighter jets that had been engaged in dogfights with the Empire's ships quickly reoriented, targeting the vulnerable Imperial vessels. Ground-based defense systems, which had been holding back the Empire's artillery, began to launch a barrage of missiles, hitting Imperial ships that had lost their ability to defend themselves properly. The humans weren't giving the Empire a moment to regroup. The loss of the flagship had shaken the entire fleet, And now, under the constant barrage of human firepower, the Empire's ships began to fall. One by one, the Imperial warships were disabled, their weapons silenced, their engines destroyed. In space, the sight was both stunning and surreal. The once invincible fleet of the Galactic Empire was being overwhelmed by the human forces. Even the most powerful ships, which had once been feared across the galaxy, were now helpless against the combined might of Earth's defenses. Back on Earth, the victory was becoming clear. The people, who had once feared the Empire's arrival, now found themselves united in triumph. It was a strange feeling, a mix of disbelief and pride. No one had expected this. Not after the Empire's show of strength, not after the first wave of attacks. But now, humanity had done what seemed impossible. They had stood up to the most powerful empire in the galaxy and fought them back. Across the world, celebrations began. People took to the streets, cheering, shouting, and embracing one another. The fear that had gripped the planet for so long was replaced by an overwhelming sense of accomplishment. Humanity had shown that they could withstand any threat, no matter how great. In the heart of the Imperial fleet, Lord Zarek watched in horror. As his ships continued to fall, the Empire's forces were scattered, and his command center was becoming chaotic. His best officers were scrambling to salvage what they could. But it was clear that the battle was lost. "This can't be," Lord Zarek muttered, his eyes wide with disbelief. "We are the Galactic Empire. How can they be defeating us?" The truth was clear. The Empire had underestimated the humans. They had thought Earth would fall in a matter of hours, perhaps even minutes. They had expected a species with no real power or will to fight back. But humanity had something the Empire did not: the will to survive. With each Imperial ship that fell, the humans grew bolder. Their final weapon had struck at the heart of the Empire, and now their forces were relentless, pressing forward with the kind of unity and determination the Empire had never seen. They were fighting not for power, not for domination, but for the survival of their world. Lord Zarek turned to his remaining officers, his face hard with anger. "Retreat," he barked, his voice cold and commanding. "We are leaving." Was a decision he had never wanted to make. The Empire had always been a symbol of absolute power, and to retreat in the face of such a small, insignificant planet was a blow to his pride. But it was clear that they could not win this battle. The humans had proven themselves too resourceful, too determined. The Empire's fleet was broken, and it was time to leave. The remaining Imperial ships turned and fled, leaving Earth behind. The war was over, and humanity had emerged victorious. On Earth, the celebrations grew louder. The victory was not just over the Empire, it was a victory for the human spirit, a reminder that no matter how great the odds, humanity would always find a way to fight back. The galaxy had underestimated them, and now they would know that humans were not to be taken lightly. General Williams stood before the massive holographic display, watching as the last of the Imperial ships vanished from Earth's orbit. She allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. The battle had been hard, but humanity had triumphed. "This is just the beginning," she said quietly, her voice filled with pride. "We've shown them what we're capable of, and we will keep fighting for our future." The Earth had won. The Galactic Empire had fallen. The humans had proved that no force in the galaxy could stand against them when they fought as one.